Welcome back. Size, shape, and spacing of objects makes a huge impact on the appearance of professionalism in a deck. Small adjustments can make huge differences in perception and how clean a slide looks to an audience. Size differences in objects can imply material differences such as scale or importance. Let's see an example. So here I've kept the slides black and white because I want to emphasize the scale in the objects as opposed to the color. So you can see that we have a brand loyalty slide here showing positionings, and we've got, best, next best, and last. Really what probably happened here is you have shapes that have been adjusted down to fit the size of the text. But here you can see that it implies that there's a scale difference, right? That maybe next best as a category is a little bit larger than best or even last. By creating consistent size within those shapes, you can see it removes any impression that one was more important or potentially larger than the others. So let's talk about text within shapes, because as I mentioned, what often happens is presenters create text boxes that automatically change in size to conform with the length of the text. If one category is a single word while another is composed of 3 words, you'll have substantially different size objects. What can often happen in these situations is presenters create text boxes that automatically change in size to conform with the length of the text. If one category is a single word while another is composed of 3 words, you'll have substantially different size objects. You have a few different ways you can manage this. If you use text boxes, you just need to make sure that you set them to be the same size at the end of your edits. The problem though with this approach is that if you come back and edit the text in any way going forward, that box is automatically going to revert to fit the size of the text and messes up your whole world. This can be extremely frustrating if you happen to catch a typo at the last minute before you're about to present. An alternative is to create a background shape and then lay your text on top of it. The shape will always remain constant in size regardless of the edits made. Catch here is now you got to manage 2 separate objects instead of just one. You can also just create a shape and type directly into it. It's a single object and it'll stay fixed in size. Let's see the differences real quick. So in this first example, I have a shape that I'm typing in. It will stay fixed in size. So I will go grab a shape and show you what it looks like. We'll create our shape, make it roughly the same size. Now I'm going to start typing. Notice that the shape does not change in size no matter how much text that I put into it. I can keep filling this thing up with text and it doesn't get any larger. This is nice if you have to go in and make some last minute edits. So let's try this with a text box. I'm going to go in, I'll create a text box. I can get it the size and shape I want it to be by manually going in and adjusting, making it a 2x2. I get a position where I want, everything's good. Well, let's decide that I want to go in and make an edit. I really love it. Oh no, look what just happened, right? It resized itself. This is a royal pain. So let's stay away from using text boxes in this space. The other way you can do it is you can create your shape and then overlay text across it. Right? I've got a nice 2x2. Then I can put a text box on top of it. I can move it anywhere in the box. I can flatten it out. This gives me a few more options, but the problem is now I have 2 different objects. So one of the best things that you can do if you're going to use this approach is you want to group them together. So highlight everything, group, and now I can move it and the text stays with the box. Shape precision issues most frequently pop up with circles. Do you want a circle or do you want an oval? If you want a circle, make it a perfect circle. This means it has to have the exact same dimensions height, and width. Let's go through an example. So if I'm creating a circle and I put the shape into the deck, I can single click it and it will automatically make me a beautiful 1 by 1 inch circle. Not everybody likes to make their circles this way though. So if I create it and I like to drag and draw my circle, I let up, well, it's not quite where I want it to be. Now I could also spend time trying to adjust it manually and get it close, which you can see up here in the top right. I actually got that pretty close, but it's not perfect. So let's say I want a 5-inch circle by a 5-inch circle. I can manually go in, I can look at my height and I can look at my width and I make sure they're exactly the same. So if I want to have a bunch of 2-inch circles, I make one and then we go back to use our copy functionality with Shift and Control. Now I have 4 perfect circles. This comes in really handy when we make icons. We'll talk about that in a second. So we've got objects now that are the same size and same shape. If we're going to use them in a series though, we want to get the spacing and alignment right. PowerPoint is a lot easier with this now than it used to be because of its auto snapping feature. That feature can be a pain though if you have lots of objects on the page. Let's walk through how we can use align and distribute tools to make life a lot easier. Let's start from scratch again. We're going to throw in some objects. Let's use some squares this time. So I have a square. I'll make it my nice SMU blue. And then maybe I want alternating colors. So I'll use my Shift Control feature. I'll make it SMU red. And I want to alternate blue, red, blue, red, blue, red as I go through. So I'll grab these 2, I'll throw them over here. I'll grab these 4, I'll throw them over here. All right, so I now have 8 boxes throughout, but I want to make them evenly distributed. You may have seen me do this before and wondered, how did that work again? Let me show you specific because the align and distribute function can be tremendously useful in saving you time. So let's get the first shape and the last shape where we want it to be on the page. Think of them as bookends. So we've got the first one where we like it to be. Let's get our last one over. So I hold down the Shift key to make sure it stays locked in. See how those little arrows pop up? That means that the left square is the same distance away from the edge of the slide that the right square is. Once I've got those anchored, I grab all of my squares, I click Arrange, Align, Distribute horizontally. Perfect. Every one of these squares is exactly the same distance apart. If you've never seen this before, you're welcome. Just saved you a whole bunch of time. So now we've got our first row where we want it to be. Let's say we wanted a few more rows. So we grab all of these, set one here. All right, see these arrows that pop up? This means my third row is exactly the same distance from the second row as the second row is from the first. And we'll make one more row. Look at that. All of my rows are equidistant horizontally and they're equidistant vertically. Very simple way to get a lot of objects on the page at one time. If you use lines, arrows, or connectors, make sure they are identical in line thickness and type, such as solid or dashed, in shape, and distance from the items that they are connecting. Also make sure that any lines that are supposed to be straight are truly straight. Very, very common for a line to become slightly diagonal when you use the mouse to make it appear larger or connect to an object. An easy way to check is to look at its height and length. For a straight line, at least one of those values has to be 0. Process flowcharts and org charts are notorious examples for inconsistency in object spacing, size, and for connectors to become glaringly obvious. Let me show you an example. So here we are with an org chart that somebody threw together relatively quickly. They use connectors for their boxes to show the hierarchy in the CMO's organization. But you can see things got just a little off kilter. So as we go in and look at the format of the line, take a look at this. You can see that it's 0.42 inches wide in this case, but it's 0.1 inches tall. Because this line got shifted around, it probably was originally a horizontal line and we used it to connect vertical. Regardless, it's off. So you want to pop that into place by setting this value back down to 0. So you can see how clean it looks when you get all of your lines on the same page looking the exact same way. I realize that was a lot to unpack there. I'm going to let all of you process that a little bit, and I'll see you in the next video.